The House will be in order. The first order of business is roll call. The clerk will unlock the roll and the members will record themselves present. Have all the members record their presence? Hickson's here. The clerk will lock the roll, lock the count, record the roll. The roll call shows 67 present, 4 absent and excused. A quorum being present, the House is ready for business. The House will now advance to the second order of business, prayer by the chaplain, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Today's prayer will be led by House Chaplain Pastor Tom Doherty, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by House Page Rebecca Failing. Will the guests in the gallery please rise?
Passage of Scripture today is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verse 27 and 28. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, through your word we are told to love our enemies and those who mistreat us. I pray each of us could respond to those who treat us poorly in a kind way. Many times, O Lord, we have no control over how others act, and Lord, we usually don't even know the circumstances they come from. I pray, dear Lord, that we as people who carry some influence would be the example to others in how we act and respond. We know, Lord, that each day we face trying situations, and I pray for your help in dealing with them. May your light shine in our lives and help us to be uplifting to others, even when it is not popular or comfortable. Thank you for the roles that each of us have, and give us the inward strength to perform them to the best of our abilities. I ask these things in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The House will now advance to the third order of business, approval of the journal. The House is at the third order.
February 4th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Judiciary Rules and Administration report that we have read and approved the House Journal of the 26th Legislative Day and recommend same be adopted as corrected. Moved by Wills, seconded by Burgoyne.
You've all heard the motion, and when we were voting, we were in our seats. You've heard the motion for the approval of the journal. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries and the report is adopted. The House will advance now to the fourth order of business, messages from the Governor and the Senate. The House is at the fourth order.
February 1st, 2013. Mr. Speaker, I transmit here with Senate Bills 1007 and 1008, which have passed the Senate. Novak, Secretary of the Senate.
Senate Bills 1007 and 1008 will be filed for the first reading. Without objection, the House will now advance to the fifth order of business, report of standing committees. The House is at the fifth order.
February 4th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Judiciary Rules and Administration report that we have printed House Bill 89, 90, 91, 92, and 93. Wills, Chairman. February 4th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Judiciary Rules and Administration report that we have transmitted enrolled House Bill 1 to the Governor at 11:40 a.m. as of this date, February 1st, 2013. Wills, Chairman. February 4th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Business report that we have had under consideration House Bill 45 and recommend that it do pass. Henderson, Chairman.
House Bill 89 will be referred to the Health and Welfare Committee. House Bill 90 will be referred to the State Affairs Committee. House Bill 91 will be referred to Commerce and Human Resources Committee. House Bill 92 will be referred to Resources and Conservation Committee. House Bill 78 that was previously held at the desk will be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. House Bill 45 will be filed for second reading. Without objection, the House will now advance to the eighth order of business, introduction, first reading, and reference of bills and resolutions. The House is at the eighth order.
In the House of Representatives, House Bill Number 94 by Revenue and Taxation Committee, an act relating to local improvement districts, amending Section 50-1707 Idaho Code to establish provisions relating to the finding by the Council that cost imposed by property owners must be exceeded by benefits derived by property owners in increased property value, to provide that no property assessment shall exceed the measurable benefits derived by the property owner, and to provide that a property owner may appeal a final assessment, amending Section 50-1709 to revise provisions relating to the filing of a protest, to revise provisions relating to the Council's consideration of protests, to provide an exception to the finality of the Council decision, to revise provisions relating to when the Council may delete improvements or property originally contemplated in the notice, to revise provisions relating to when the Council shall not proceed with work protested, to provide for an appeal in a later hearing, to revise provisions relating to written protests, and when the governing board shall not be allowed to proceed with the creation of the district for a period of time, to revise the matters that the City Council or Board of County Commissioners shall take into consideration in considering the creation of the proposed district, and to make technical corrections, and amending Section 50-1710 Idaho Code to revise provisions relating to certain findings and revise provisions relating to the method of assessment. House Bill Number 95 by Revenue and Taxation Committee, an act relating to property taxes, amending Section 63501 Idaho Code to provide that the Board of Equalization shall grant, allow, or deny applications for exemption from property tax valuation, to revise provisions relating to appeals heard by the Board, amending Section 63501A to remove reference to an exemption decision in a taxpayer's right to appeal, amending Section 63602 to provide that the Board of Equalization shall hear applications for tax exemptions, and to provide that appeals shall be heard by the Board of Tax Appeals or District Court, and declaring an emergency. In the Senate, Senate Bill Number 1007 by Transportation Committee, an act relating to motor vehicle registration, amending Section 49402 Idaho Code to revise a term to remove reference to the Idaho and to add language relating to the staggered registration, amending Section 49402A Idaho Code to add language relating to staggered registration, amending Section 49434 Idaho Code to add language relating to a staggered registration, and providing an effective date. Senate Bill Number 1008 by Transportation Committee, an act relating to the issuance of salvage certificates of title, amending Section 49524 Idaho Code to remove the requirement to issue salvage certificates from insurance companies and salvage pools, to provide for the submission of applications for salvage certificates by insurance companies and salvage pools, to provide for the issuance of salvage certificates by the Department, to provide for the notation theft recovery to appear on certificates of title in addition to title record when an insurer has acquired a vehicle in a settlement of a theft claim, and upon recovery the vehicle is not a salvage vehicle, and to make technical corrections.
House Bills 94 and 95 will be referred to the Judiciary Rules and Administration Committee for printing. Senate Bills 1007 and 1008 will be referred to the Transportation and Defense Committee. Without objection, the House will now advance to the 10th order of business, second reading of bills and joint resolutions. The House is at the 10th order. Good gentleman from
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from District 3.
Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention there is a technical problem with House Bill 27. I therefore ask unanimous consent that House Bill 27 be referred back to the Business Committee.
You've all heard the good gentleman from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good gentleman yield to a question?
Will the gentleman from District 3 yield to a question?
The gentleman yields.
Thank you,
The gentleman yields, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman. Good gentleman, could you just remind me what House Bill 27 is? I just turned on my computer.
Gentleman from 3.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good gentlemen. House Bill 27 came to us from the Building Safety Department, and after we acted on it and approved it to move forward, they pointed out an administrative problem contained within the verbiage that they wish to amend. And so we respected their request and have asked it to come back to committee.
You've all heard the unanimous consent request that House Bill 27 be returned back to the Business Committee. Is there an objection? Hearing none, so ordered. The House is at the 10th order.
In the House of Representatives, House Bill 39 by Transportation and Defense Committee regarding recreational vehicles. House Bill 40 by Transportation and Defense Committee regarding cross-country skiing advisory committees. House Bill 41 by Health and Welfare Committee regarding driver's licenses. House Resolution number 2 by Judiciary Rules and Administration Committee regarding House Rule 76. House Bill 26 by Business Committee regarding heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. House Bill 27 by Business Committee regarding plumbers. House Bill 28 by Business Committee regarding manufactured home dealer and installer licensing. House Bill 46 by Business Committee regarding fire escapes and doors.
House Bills 39, 40, 41, 26, 28, and 46, and House Resolution number 2 will be filed for third reading. Without objection, the House will now advance to the 11th order of business, third reading of bills and joint resolutions. The House is at the 11th order. The House will now have under consideration House Bill 34.
Mr. Speaker,
Good gentleman from District 4.
I ask unanimous consent that further reading of this bill be suspended.
You've all heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the gentleman from District 4 has the floor to open debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is brought on behalf of the Speech and Hearing Services Licensure Board. The board regulates and licenses 3 separate professions: hearing aid dealers and fitters, audiologists, and speech-language pathologists. The board is an independent board served by the Idaho Bureau of Occupational Licenses. This bill does 2 separate things. First of all, it changes rules regarding consent. Quorum for the licensure board meetings. And the second thing it does is it updates educational qualifications required for an audiologist license, so one of the 3 areas of board oversight. What it does is it changes to conform with the current accredited educational programs available, which is currently limited to doctoral degree programs here in Idaho, and that's a national standard as well. The bill also clarifies that only practicum experience obtained as part of the doctoral degree program is necessary. Since master's programs in audiology are no longer available, this update will not affect currently enrolled students, including those in Idaho. And those with masters already will be grandfathered in. So there's been no opposition to the bill. It is unopposed and passed unanimously through the Health and Welfare Committee. I ask for your support on this bill. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good gentleman yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman. I'm just doing a little looking on the internet, and it looks like there are 32 states that still allow audiology licensing with a master's degree. Was that discussed in the committee at all?
It was not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To debate against the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of bill that we see here frequently that's termed as a housekeeping bill, and it may be, but it has an economic impact. Frequently we see various restrictions on licensing come through, and I'm concerned about any time we change licensing requirements because it affects the marketplace. We are currently concerned about having access to specialists in rural areas. By changing this requirement, we preclude people who may be in the pipeline. We preclude options for people who may want to practice audiology but can't afford to go through a PhD degree. It seems like we're always progressively restricting professional degrees. And so there's potentially an impact. Now, I don't have all of the information on audiologists, and I don't know what programs are out there, but I know that at least from if I might refer Mr. Speaker to a website that I'm looking at.
Without objection,
The
the
U.S.
gentleman may
News,
refer.
excuse me, U.S. News University Directory, which is a fairly up-to-date compilation of professional degrees. U.S. News does summaries every year of schooling comparisons, and it indicates that 38 states allow licensure for master's degrees for audiology, with a master's degrees from audiology. 18 require a doctorate. There's a number of programs listed here. It says explore master's degrees in audiology programs online. Now I'm concerned maybe there's, and I don't know, I'm not casting any aspersions here about the reason for this, but whenever we see licensing issues here, whether it's contractors, whether it's naturopaths, whether it's a number of different professions that I've seen here over the years, there's always a concern about a monopoly. We have a balance between trying to make sure that the training is adequate, but on the other hand, not excluding qualified people. This particular licensing program does require a state exam. So to me, if somebody can pass the state exam, whether they have a master's degree or a PhD, we should not exclude that option from our citizens, both those who are seeking to get into the profession and those who are seeking to find an audiologist out in areas that perhaps may be underserved. So at this point in time, I'm going to vote no on this. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from 4 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, good gentleman. I was wondering if you could explain to me why the provision on line 21 that the public member be present in order for there to be a quorum is proposed to be deleted. What the nature of the problem was with public members' attendance and why the public member was deemed somewhat less important, apparently, than the other people who are listed in the statute as being required to be in attendance.
Gentleman from 4.
Thank you. There was no specific instance of a problem with the public member being present that was brought during committee. However, I believe the concern was that given the highly technical nature of what this board is dealing with, and given that that business needs to move on, if that quorum were not be able to met because that public member perhaps didn't understand the importance of the meeting, that business could continue for the board.
Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing good lady from District 8.
Did I get it? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Loud and clear, good lady. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't anticipate a whole lot of debate on this, but I will tell you that my seatmate has made an excellent point. I think we might, down the road, find some underservice issues for rural, and if you don't know it yet, I am rural. So I would be, and the other question raised was a very good one too. This may be a little bit premature, so I will be opposing the bill.
Good gentleman from District 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good ladies and gentlemen of the body, I just spoke with Roger Hales, who is in charge of the Occupational Licensing Board. The state statute in Idaho requires that schools be nationally accredited for licensure or to be in position to be licensed in the state of Idaho. The national accrediting body only recognizes PhD programs at this point in time. Yes, there are 32 states that have masters in audiology, but they are not recognized by the national accrediting body as being accredited for audiology. And Idaho statute requires only accredited schools that you can apply to. So this is nothing but an update, and it is truly a housekeeping bill for previous Idaho statutes. So the master's degree programs are not accredited by the national accrediting body and therefore are not capable of being licensed in the state of Idaho. I hope that clears up some of the issues here. Thank you.
Is there further debate? For what purpose does a good lady from District 8 rise?
Mr. Speaker, if it's appropriate, I would like to make an inquiry of the gentleman who just spoke.
Will the gentleman from District 27 yield to a question?
Gentleman yields.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I would have to wonder why, and maybe it was presented in the opening and I missed it, why doesn't the national board want to credit the master's degree program anymore?
Very good question.
The gentleman from 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very good question, good lady. And I think this strikes to the heart of exactly what is happening. A good number of years ago, you could graduate from medical school and you did not have to do an internship, nor did you have to do a residency, and you could actually go and practice medicine. Some years after that, the knowledge base in medicine expanded to the point to where you had to serve an internship before you could get a license to practice medicine. In the last number of years, 15 to 20 years ago, the field of medicine and all the specialties have done away with internships, and now a residency is required before you can go practice medicine. The knowledge base in medicine and its related fields is doubling at the rate of about every 5 years at this point in time. So the fact is that longer and longer periods of time are being required to educate people in the fields of medicine and other affiliated disciplines associated with healthcare. And the national accrediting body now feels that to have an adequate knowledge base to go out and serve the public, that a PhD or the equivalent thereof is required in audiology. It is no longer sufficient for public safety and for your knowledge base in audiology to actually just have a master's degree. And that is the reason, good lady, for the increase in educational requirements.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 8.
Thank you, gentlemen. I guess I'm still, Mr. Speaker, a little bit...
Good lady, it's appropriate for you to ask another question, but you can't debate a second time until everyone else has a chance.
He also serves who stands and waits. Thank you.
Is there further debate for the first time? The gentleman from District 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman from District 4 stand for question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Good gentleman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Was there any indication as to whether those with a master's degree would be grandfathered in, or do they all have to now upgrade their education?
Gentleman from 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, there is going to be a clause there is contemplated that those with masters, those who are currently licensed as audiologists, can continue with that licensure.
Mr. Speaker, follow up?
Would the gentleman yield further?
I will.
The gentleman will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman, it sounds as though this will be taken care of by rules in support of this statute. Is that correct?
Gentleman from 4.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to need some
Would the gentleman from
clarification on the antecedent to this.
Would the gentleman from 2 clarify his question,
Yes,
please?
Mr. Speaker, if I may. Does it spell out in the statute that the master's degree would indeed be grandfathered in to keep their audio license?
Gentleman from 4.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not positive whether that would be through the rules promulgated directly by the administrative agency, but that was the discussion that was had during the committee, is that those who are currently licensed could continue with that licensure.
Mr. Speaker, one more follow-up, please.
Will the gentleman yield further?
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields.
Good gentleman, is there any indication as to the increased safety to the customers or to the clients of these companies that are licensed by requiring this higher education?
Gentleman from 4.
There was no discussion in terms of to specifically answer your question, the question on the floor as to whether or not there were safety issues that were addressed. There were not. However, there was discussion of what is actually going on in terms of the training that is now being incorporated into the doctor's degree or doctorate program that had originally been post-master's training requirements. So it's all still part of the licensure process, but now it's incorporated into the PhD rather than postmaster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate for the first time? The gentleman from District 14.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the good gentleman from 27 yield to another question, please?
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yields.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you. There seems to be a challenge that we're facing here in terms of the weighing this higher standard, and as a result impacting our ability to provide audiologists, thank you, versus this issue of accreditation. Now clearly in these 38 plus other states, I'm assuming they're all going to either have to change their rule or lose their accreditation as well. As we weigh this out, we obviously have a need in Idaho for doctors, particularly in the rural setting. Does that need perhaps outweigh losing our accreditation at this point, and then perhaps in the future looking to have this requirement, but in the short term trying to meet the immediate need of providing this service, particularly in our rural settings?
Gentleman from District 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman. I'm not sure of the shortage of audiologists per se, and I think that's what we're talking about. To my knowledge, that has not come up as an issue, a shortage of audiologists. I do know that all of the current practicing audiologists with a master's degree will be grandfathered in, so there will not be any disruption of the current services of audiology. But again, I think this good gentleman just reflects the increasing complexity of educational requirements to provide a service to the general public. And I appreciate everybody's concern about cost, et cetera. But by the same token, the highest priority of all of us is public safety and the ability to make sure that when we do render a service for the public, that we do it, that every practitioner of whatever art does that to the best of their ability, and if increased educational requirements are necessary, then I think we have to default to patient safety above all else.
Is there further debate?
Mr. Chairman.
Good gentleman from District 23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the gentleman from 4 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman from District 4 yield to a question?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman from 4, on the part where it says 4 members of the board shall constitute a quorum, and it crosses out the public member. The public member, even though that is crossed out there, is still a member of the board, is he not?
Correct.
Gentleman from District 4.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. That is correct.
A follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Will the gentleman from District 4 yield to another question?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
When a meeting is requested, are all members of the board notified concurrently so that they all know and have plenty of time to get there?
The gentleman from 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman from 23, I believe that, and this was not specifically discussed in committee, however, it would be my understanding that yes, the members of the board are notified prior to the meeting so that they are able to make arrangements for attending that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I speak to the bill?
The gentleman has the floor to debate for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry.
The gentleman has the floor.
This part concerns me, that we can convene a quorum without the public member, even though the public member is part of the board. I'm not sure if we really want to do that, because that's an aspect of the board that should be heard nearly every time, and so I'm pondering on that just a little bit. Thank you.
Is there further debate? The gentleman from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just quickly to add a couple things. This board has 7 members. 3 are speech and language pathologists, 2 are audiologists, 1 is a hearing aid fitter and dealer, and 1 is a public member. As I recall the testimony in committee, it was such that absent of the public member would eliminate the possibility of this board meeting, and it met infrequently. So it could be a long time between dealing with issues of license, both as discipline and an approval of license. The other thing I'd bring to the body's attention is that this was brought not by Roger Hale and not by the staff, but by the board itself, the board that sits and says what are adequate credentials for the protection of public safety. And I think they deserve some credence in our deliberations. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Is there debate for the second time? Hearing none, would the good gentleman care to close debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I would.
Gentleman has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to reiterate one more time there was no acrimony from within the industry in bringing this bill from the licensure board to the legislature to update the language to match what's already happening within our state. This is a self-regulating industry, highly specialized industry, and they brought this bill to us and are asking for us to update our code so that we can be accurate in terms of what we're asking of a industry that's already regulating itself. There's a difference between a top-down regulatory scheme and what's being asked of here. This is coming from below, and I would warn against the sort of myopic legislative narcissism that we fight here on a daily basis, wherein a legislative body believes it knows what's best for an independent, self-regulating body, not by nature of fact that's been brought before them, but by the nature of our title as a legislative body. Our job is to champion the rule of law, to make sure that law is relevant, up to date, and not to take pot shots, if you will, at realities and that are properly beyond our scope of powers.
Mr. Speaker, I'd object to the argument.
Please state your objection.
I think it's divisive. It's not going to the debate issues.
Will the gentleman keep his, I would rule that terms like narcissistic pot shots might fall into the gentleman's objection. So if the gentleman will close the debate, make your points and close the debate.
All right. I think I've made my point. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The debate is closed. The question is, shall House Bill 34 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the roll and the members will record their votes. Has every member voted?
Eskridge.
Representative Eskridge votes aye. The clerk will lock the roll and the...
Okay, we got it. That's good.
Has every member voted?
Yes.
Does any member wish to change their vote? The clerk will lock the roll and record the vote. The roll call shows 37 aye, 30 nay, 3 absent and excused. House Bill 34 has passed the House. Is there a correction to title? Hearing none, House Bill 34 will be transmitted to the Senate. The House will now have under consideration House Bill 35. The gentleman from District 35.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask unanimous consent that we disregard reading of the...
You've all heard the unanimous consent to dispense with the further reading of the bill. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the gentleman has the floor.
This bill is brought on behalf of the Board of Social Work Examiners. This board is an independent licensing board served by the Bureau of Occupational Licenses. The bill accomplishes 3 things. First, the bill provides the board clear authority to review a social worker's practice based upon a complaint. The review could include clients' records, notes, and other materials of the practice. The review would be confidential. This authority is consistent with other mental health boards. It's the same language found in the Counselor and Marriage and Family Therapist Act. There have been occasions when the board could not obtain records of a social worker who was the subject of a complaint. The bill also adds 2 additional grounds for discipline of the social worker. This change would allow the board to discipline an Idaho licensed social worker if they were disciplined by another state or territory. Many social workers hold licenses in more than one state, and it is important that the Idaho board be able to consider the bad conduct of an Idaho licensee regardless of whether regardless of where their conduct occurred. This change would allow the board to discipline a social worker who failed to comply with the board's order. This change is being made based upon an Idaho Supreme Court case that held that a board could not discipline a licensee who violated a board order unless conduct is a ground for discipline under the law. The Idaho State Association supports this bill. There has been no opposition to this bill. The House Health and Welfare Committee unanimously passed this bill and would urge your support. I stand for questions.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, the debate is closed. The question is, shall House Bill 35 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the roll and the members will record their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote?
Wills needs to vote.
Representative Wills, how do you vote? The clerk will lock the roll and record the vote. The roll call shows 67 ayes, 0 nays, 3 absent and excused. House Bill 35 has passed the House. Is there a correction to title? Hearing none, House Bill 35 will be transmitted to the Senate. The House will now have under consideration House Bill 36. Good gentleman from District 34.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that we suspend further reading of the bill upon unanimous consent.
You've heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good gentleman from District 34 has the floor to open debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is brought on behalf of the Board of Examiners of Nursing Home Administrators. The bill accomplishes 2 things to Regulation 54-1612. The bill provides authority to impose up to a $1,000 based upon disciplinary proceedings for licensee violation of board's laws or regulations. The bill also provides the board authority to order a licensee to pay the costs and fees incurred in their investigation and prosecution if they are found to have violated the board's laws or rules. A large investigation and prosecuting of a licensee could exhaust the board's funds, and it would seem unreasonable to share this burden of inappropriate activity onto other members of the board. Plus, it adds flexibility. Currently, the board can only revoke a license or suspend it, which puts the nursing home out of business, either temporarily or completely. This would give flexibility, and it would be much easier to get a person's attention with up to $1,000 fine, plus whatever fees are involved to prove the point. If a licensee does not feel that it's fair, a hearing would be held with an attorney for him and an attorney for the plaintiff board and a hearing officer. So this is very fair and gives more regulation, ability and flexibility to the nursing home board. The Health and Welfare Board has passed this with a do pass recommendation to the floor, and I stand for any questions.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good gentleman from 34 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, good gentleman. I understand the provision of the bill about requiring a licensee who is adjudicated to be in violation to pay the board's fees. Was there any discussion in committee, in the presentation of the agency or otherwise, as to why there's no provision in the bill for the licensee who is wrongly accused and exonerated in the proceedings not being able to recover his or her fees?
Gentleman from 34.
Sir, in that case, there would be no fees or fines presented to the nursing home licensee.
Mr. Speaker, a follow-up?
Good gentleman from District 16. Will the gentleman from 34 yield to another question?
Yes.
The gentleman will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is as to whether there was any explanation to the committee or any discussion in the committee as to why an exonerated licensee who's had an action brought against them would not be able to recover for their fees and costs in defending themselves against the action to remove their or to affect their license.
Gentleman from 34.
In a court of law, if you're there to defend yourself, you have to pay your own fees, just like district court or magistrate court. If you're going to require to go to hearing because you don't believe that's correct what they're saying, you've got to pay your own fees. Now, you won't have to pay the fees of the board's prosecution or investigation. That's their responsibility.
Is there further debate?
Mr. Speaker?
Good gentleman from 16.
What I was attempting to determine is whether there was a rationale for the kind of the one-way aspect of this, that the agency gets to recover, but the innocent party does not. And I don't think that I received an answer, so I would just like to comment, if I may, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We're taking your comments as debate in opposition.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Although I'm not sure that I will vote against this bill, it strikes me that it is somewhat unfair that the agency, on the one hand, if it prevails, recovers fees and costs, while if the licensee is exonerated from an accusation that they've done something wrong, that they may not get to recover any fees and costs. And I don't think I would respectfully disagree with the gentleman with respect to the ability of people to recover in court for their fees and costs. There are those circumstances in which an innocent party who is sued or who is bringing a case can recover fees and costs under some circumstances. It's a complicated area of the law, and it just bothers me that there is a seemingly unequal treatment of the licensee in a situation where the licensee has been exonerated. Thank you.
Is there further debate? The gentleman from District 24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good gentleman yield to a question concerning...
Will the gentleman from District 34 yield to a question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman. Is this a civil action or a criminal action? It appears to follow a section C on line 22 that refers to the license being changed in case of a guilt by fraud or deceit, which would appear to fall under the criminal code. And now we're adding the ability to add a fine to that. But isn't this already a matter of in the criminal code for prosecutorial discretion?
Gentleman from 34.
The gentleman is correct. If it is a civil case, in the case of fraud, whether you're fraudulently using Medicaid or Medicare monies, it would be a civil case. But not all of them, or some of them are just administrative rules, and they would only be prosecuted by the board for those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, good gentleman.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Good lady from District 11.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just wondering, I would like to go ahead and make a comment in regards to the good gentleman's question from 16. I had the exact same question in committee as to what would happen if a person had been accused of something and then it found out that they were not actually responsible for that action. And what the board had explained was that it's extremely rare that this actually goes to prosecutorial. Most of the time, it only goes through investigation process. And the investigation process itself is actually extremely lengthy and expensive. But their actions here are not to persecute anybody. But these are nursing homes, and these are our elderly, they are our invalid, they are the people that cannot speak for themselves, and therefore they absolutely have a duty to go ahead and do the investigation, although it is rare. Now, when it comes to actually prosecutorial, it actually only applies if they are prosecuted. And I believe that that tied into actually some statute that already existed. Did that have, and I hope that was helpful, and that this was actually meant to keep nursing homes open while they can go ahead and investigate, use the fine process instead of closing them down. But the investigation part is actually extremely important, and it's actually lengthy and can be expensive as well. So I just hope that that helped. That was the explanation I was given, and I was satisfied with that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 14.
Thank you. Just to rise to declare a Rule 38. I am an owner of an assisted living facility, which may or may not apply to, and I do intend to vote.
So noted. Is there further debate? Hearing none, I'm going to allow the good gentleman from District 34 to close debate, as I have interpreted there being debate in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, the change in this bill, was designed to be something proactive for the nursing home licensees. Instead of facing a complete cutoff, here they can have an administrative hearing and have a fine up to $1,000. There would be some costs involved. The costs were not usually very large in its amount, but this was to be favorable for the licensees and not to harm them. And based on that, I would urge the House to vote on this act in a positive manner. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, good gentleman. Debate is closed. The question is, shall House Bill 36 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the roll and the members will record their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the count and record the vote. The roll call shows 54 aye, 13 nay, 3 absent and excused. House Bill 36 has passed the House. Is there correction to title? Hearing none, House Bill 36 will be transmitted to the Senate. The gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, due to the absence of the floor sponsor, I'd ask unanimous consent that House Bill 42 hold its place on the third reading calendar one legislative day.
Without objection, so ordered. The House will now have under consideration House Bill 53. Clerk may read. Oh, the gentleman from District 22.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to dispense with further reading of House Bill 53.
You all heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good gentleman from District 22 has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good ladies and good gentlemen. House Bill 53 is a housekeeping bill. I use that term loosely here, apparently, brought by the State Treasurer's
Use
Office.
it at your own risk, sir.
Thank you. This bill clarifies elected officials whose salaries are already set forth in Idaho Code 59501 shall not receive additional compensation for attending an Idaho Bond Bank Authority Board meeting. Their salaries are already specified in another section. This bill came out of committee with a unanimous do-pass recommendation, and I ask for the same here as well. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, the debate is closed. The question is, shall House Bill 53 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the roll, and the members will record their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the count and record the vote. The roll call shows 67 aye, 0 nay, 3 absent and excused. House Bill 53 is passed the House. Is there correction to title? Hearing none, House Bill 53 will be transmitted to the Senate.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, we're waiting for some additional information on House Bill 58. So with that, I'd ask unanimous consent that House Bill 58 hold its place on the third reading calendar one legislative day.
Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the House will now advance to the 15th order of business, announcements. Are there announcements? Good gentleman from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Chairman Silas Whitman and the Nez Perce Tribe, I'd like to remind you of their reception this evening. It's always one of the high points of the legislative social calendar. It will be at 5 to 7 p.m. this evening at Berry Hill Restaurant. You all are welcome, and they're great hosts. Thank you.
I agree with that great host part. Good gentleman from District 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a follow-up announcement. There are still 20 bags of Idaho-grown potatoes left. If any of you would like them, they're just outside the Page's door, so please take those home and if you can use them. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? Good gentleman from District 14.
Thank you. Just would like to encourage members of the body to participate in today's higher education luncheon. They'll be highlighting some of the key economic development projects they are involved in. This is exciting. This is where a lot of this research actually becomes marketable, and so it's always exciting to hear about that. So that's noon today at the Crystal Ballroom in the Hoff Building. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? The clerk may read.
Following are the Standing Committee meeting announcements for this afternoon. Agricultural Affairs Committee will meet this afternoon at 1:30, East Wing, Room 42, Andrus, Chairman. Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee will not meet this afternoon, Raybould, Chairman. Local Government Committee will not meet this afternoon, Barrett, Chairman. Transportation and Defense Committee will meet this afternoon at 1:30, East Wing, Room 40, Palmer, Chairman. For tomorrow morning, Tuesday, February 5th, Education Committee will meet at 9 a.m., East Wing, Room 41, De Mordaunt, Chairman. Health and Welfare Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., East Wing, Room 20, Wood, Chairman. Revenue and Taxation Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., East Wing, Room 42, Collins, Chairman. And State Affairs Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., East Wing, Room 40, Lurcher, Chairman.
Good gentleman from District 14.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One other announcement. I apologize. I should have combined these. As many of you know, this last Friday we had a listening session for education, a joint listening session between House and Ed. It was well received, and as a result of the response, we've decided to conduct another listening session that will be held next Monday, so a week from today. It will be held at a little later time, from 4 to 6 p.m. so that members of the public that could not attend the earlier session will have the opportunity now to attend this later session. So again, pleased to announce a second listening session, joint session, next Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there further announcements? Good gentleman from District 24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House-Senate Joint Millennium Fund Committee will meet today at noon, West Wing 17. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there further announcements? The House will now advance to the 16th order of business, adjournment. The House is at the 16th order. Good gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn until the hour of 11 a.m. Tuesday, February 5th, 2013.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the House stands adjourned until the hour of 11 a.m. Tuesday, February 5th, 2013.
Of Idaho Cities, the Idaho Cable Telecommunications Association, and your contributions to the Idaho Public Television Endowment.